video will introduce the elements of academic voice. Your voice is how your personality and distinct way of speaking come through in your writing. It is a mixture of your tone, word choice, and style. Each of us has our own unique voice when we write, and we often adjust that voice to fit into different situations. When writing for college, you will need to use an academic voice. In this video, I will explain some ways to adjust your tone, word choice, and register to create a more academic voice in your college writing assignments. Let's define some of the aspects of voice. Tone is expressed through the words and details an author selects. It conveys the attitude or perspective the writer has towards a particular topic. We often use words related to emotions to describe a writer's tone. Let's look at an example from a New York Times editorial. The statement reads, "The Department of Education lies in ruins at precisely the time when the country most needs it. The president-elect and his new education secretary, whoever that turns out to be, need to get the institution up and running as swiftly as possible. Given the dire context, there is no time to waste." In the simplest of terms, we could just say the tone here is serious. We could be more precise. Notice phrases like dire context, no time to waste, up and running as swiftly as possible creates an urgent tone as the writer spurs his reader to action. When he uses a word like ruins, we see a very negative tone, suggesting something ominous. So there are many ways we could describe the tone here: serious, urgent, ominous. Any of those words would work. In academic writing, you should strive for a tone that is direct, confident, professional, and well-informed. You want to avoid sounding too personal, too emotional, too combative, or doubtful of your opinions. Some ways to achieve this are to use first person sparingly and strategically. There are certainly times when you will need to use first person to insert a narrative or even to write something like a report. However, you want to sound confident by avoiding phrases like "I think" or "I believe" in an argument essay. Often a third-person style will create that confident tone. Make sure your tone is aligned with your specific audience. For example, when writing a lab report in the sciences, sarcasm is inappropriate. However, you may be able to employ a sarcastic tone when writing an editorial for a journalism class. Pay close attention to the tone of writers in your specific discipline and practice using a similar tone. Also, pay close attention to your word choice. We'll explore how word choice can affect your tone and your voice in the following slides. Diction is the fancy term for describing a writer's choice of words or phrasing in writing or speech. Every word has two levels of meaning. First, we have the denotation. That's just the basic dictionary definition. Then we have the connotation, which is the emotional association that words carry. We have an image here of a dog, and if I were to describe this image to readers, I have many options I can use to describe what I see. I could call it a canine, a dog, a pet, or my fur baby. And depending on which words I choose, it creates a different image in the reader's mind. Canine sounds very objective and scientific. But when we look at a word like fur baby, you know I have an emotional connection to the animal in this image. I have other options as well. I could use the word doggo, which has a much more lighthearted, humorous sort of tone. I could use purebred or mutt, depending on how specific or precise I want it to be. Each of these words will create a very different tone in my writing. So ultimately, I have to decide what I'm trying to achieve, what image I want to create in my reader's mind as I decide which word to use. In academic writing, we want to choose words that are a bit more elevated than everyday speech. So for example, instead of saying something like "get rid of," we could say "eliminate." In academic writing, precise word choice is also very important. So let's look at two examples here. When people talk about the negative effects of fracking, they often feel that they have no say in what companies do or how they do it. Now, this sentence is fine, and most teachers would find it acceptable in an essay. The tone is appropriate. However, we could make it more precise. When people discuss the devastating and destructive effects of fracking in their communities, they express how little control they believe they have when it comes to the regulation of oil and gas companies. The wording here becomes much more specific and therefore creates a stronger claim. So the word choice enriches the text by offering more details. In addition to word choice, we should also consider style. Style is the term for how you write, and it is another important element of your overall voice. One element that impacts your style is the level of formality, known as register. The ways of writing and speaking exist on a continuum from the highly informal, say you're playing an online game with your best buds, to the extremely formal, like you might speak if you were in a courtroom in front of a judge. The language we use often changes according to the context in which we communicate. When talking with friends, we use a relaxed form of language, often referred to as colloquial. This register is much more common in speech, but you also see it in text messages, emails, social media posts. It's sometimes used in writing as well, but it's not appropriate for professional or academic writing. In these situations, we use a more formal register. This is the form of English you will read in newspapers, textbooks, legal documents, and business correspondence. It's important to understand that one register, informal or formal, is not necessarily better than the other. They are just used in different situations. It would be awkward to maintain a very formal register with close friends or family, just like it would be weird to be too informal with your boss. Remember, register is how we say something, so we can say the same content in different registers. For example, dude asked me to pick him up at 3, and I was like, no way. This is very informal, and if I needed to explain this situation to maybe a supervisor or somebody where I needed to maintain a formal register, I would have to rephrase it. When my friend asked me to pick him up at 3 in the morning, I told him that I would not. Says the same thing, but in a different level of formality. In academic writing, remember to maintain that more formal register. So say, for example, you are writing a media analysis over Keeping Up with the Kardashians. A statement like this might be too informal. I think that Keeping Up with the Kardashians is kind of dumb, but it's also fascinating. Notice there's very informal language here with kinda, and it's very vague as well. You could make that more formal. Keeping Up with the Kardashians is certainly simplistic and superficial, but its great popularity indicates that it appeals to a wide audience due to its enviable depiction of excess and overindulgence. Notice there are a lot of improvements here. The register is more formal, and the word choice is much more specific and precise. So we've talked about tone, word choice, register, and of course there are many other elements that can impact your writer's voice, but we're just at the beginning of your academic writing journey. So to end, I just want to share a few tips that can help you create your own academic voice. First, read as much as possible. The more you read, the more you will begin to notice different voices in writing. It can be particularly helpful to read academic journals and books for exposure to a more academic style. Use a thesaurus and dictionary in tandem. Using a thesaurus will help you identify more advanced and precise words for your college essays. However, it's important to always double-check the meanings of words from the thesaurus in your dictionary. Sometimes the thesaurus will offer words that are close in meaning, but don't mean exactly the same thing. Write every day and let your personality shine. Writer's voice develops over time, so you have to write every day to develop it. The more you write, the more you develop your own voice and style. Let go of fear and be willing to make mistakes. You only learn by taking risks. Edit and revise, but later. Don't try to edit and revise immediately after you finish a draft. Get your words down and take a break. Editing later gives you the ability to focus on your voice and not get bogged down with things like grammar or punctuation. Finally, use the college tutoring resources and seek feedback from your professor. Engaging with a scholarly audience, like tutors or instructors, will give you the practice you need to polish your academic voice. Thanks for watching, and remember to contact your instructor if you have any questions.